Um, yeah, so let's kick things off.
We're good to go.
Great. Welcome to our second event or second workshop for this semester. And we really wanted to bring this topic of um, building your team and the importance of mentors and sponsors earlier in the semester, so that you can plan ahead and be thinking about this right from the get-go. And uh, today's agenda will start off with a quick presentation, giving you some food for thought, definitions of like mentors and sponsors and coaches, and some considerations and resources. And we'll also have a chance to hear from a SPH alumna, and how Annie will share her story later about how she utilized some of the resources with the mentor match. And of course, using this event as a connecting point, where we'll have some parent share time. And so you can get to know one another. And then we'll regroup for some closing remarks, and some other pro tips and final advice and best practices, and some announcements of events. And so, as I mentioned before, this is an interactive event, so we encourage you to drop questions in the chat, unmute, ask a question, and we welcome that. And just as we have people in the Zoom room from all different places, like we're glad to welcome a lot of people that are here for the first time, some that are almost finishing your semester, and uh, a good amount from covering all of our different concentrations. Uh, and most of you are just starting out, but some are mid-level professional. And this is a salient topic, even at any season of your professional career. And hope that as the CUNY SPH career coach, I'm here. My name is Tina, and my pronouns are she, her. And I would love to meet with you to explore further career conversations. So hopefully you, from this event, you can sign up for that. And utilizing Handshake, if there's any questions about that, we'd be happy to answer any questions about that. And the vast majority have not had a professional mentor. Some have had, so we'd love to hear about your experience as well. But questions from the group during the registration, it covers the gambit of like starting the conversation and getting tips on networking and how to find the right person throughout the journey, where to find mentors, and steps to doing so, as well as having those mentors and sponsors aligning with those needs that you should have, along with getting some practical advice in cultivating that relationship, to learn and maximize this opportunity. And I really like this question about some mistakes to avoid when seeking mentorship or sponsorship. We'll cover that along with other questions, and have time for that. So encourage you again to drop anything that you're thinking of in the chat, or just feel free to unmute yourself. And also just to start out that with some reminders that this career journey, it is not a sprint, but a marathon, right? And so being prepared for that long haul and kind of training for a marathon as well. And other things about the career journey, that it's not linear, but it has many twists and turns. And so, I think you'll find out even from the Zoom room how many different career transitioners there might be, or career pivots people are making. And so how to navigate kind of those many twists and turns. And another piece of advice is about the career journey is that it takes a village, right? That to uplift others, but also to be uplifted and to reach out. And so kind of thinking through your team and building your team and connecting with people to be on your team and to lead that team. And, at CUNY SPH, you already have many people that are part of your team. All your advisors, whether it's your academic advisor, your faculty advisor, fieldwork advisor, career advisor, also your professors, your peers, your fellow students. Some of you may be working. Maybe it's colleagues there or professionals in your workplace, and certainly CUNY SPH alum. And so these are all different people that could potentially be mentors, sponsors, and advocates. So as we're looking at these kinds of different roles on your team, we'll look at 3 in particular today, and sort of takes a moment to define each of these kinds of roles and these relationships with a coach, a mentor, or an advocate and champion, and all that are allies on your side to build you up and help you reach that next space in your career. And so for a coach, kind of like this sort of relationship, it's generally more like a short term with defined dates and goals. And that time spent with a coach is really on finding within yourself and unlocking your potential and driving that motivation and providing resources for you to reach those goals and achieve better results and giving feedback and advice on that. And so I will say, as a CUNY SPH career coach, some of the meeting topics that I've spoken to students and alum about span the spectrum from really just starting out researching opportunities, getting an understanding of what platforms out there, how to leverage the platforms to make them work for you, and getting organized and exploring career pathways, various career pathways, and doing that industry research, right? As well as preparing all of the materials for applying and submitting applications to these opportunities. From the resume, the cover letter, maybe it's personal statement for PhD programs, interview preparation and articulating those star stories, and preparing for events as well, like networking events, practicing your tell me about yourself and networking strategies, all the way through to like managing different offers and negotiating that, as well as those that just landed jobs and are just starting and want to continue to think about professional development, even in this new career right from the get-go. And so kind of thinking about planning out different steps in your career, or figuring out what the options are, and deciding what are priorities based around your values, around your interests, around those strengths and weaknesses. And so, again, would look forward to meeting with you all throughout your time here at CUNY SPH. So please sign up on Handshake, grab an appointment, and we'll talk some more. For a mentor, this ally is someone that's maybe just a little further, a few steps ahead of you in the career. Generally, it's usually in a similar academic major or industry, and where they can kind of facilitate this transfer of their knowledge and offering their guidance, stories from their lived experience, and give you some practical solutions for maybe day-to-day challenges, and helping you navigate your own journey to increase that chance of success. So I think for mentoring and that mentor relationship, the most important thing is to remember is that it's a two-way street, and that the mentee, you as a mentee, may be even guiding this relationship in sharing to the mentor how they can help you. And so kind of taking that initiative, approaching with curiosity, preparing questions to ask because of things that you've read about, research that you've done, and really sort of sharing your questions to a mentor and letting them know how to help you. So kind of like helping them help you in that way. And for an advocate or sponsor or a champion, it's somebody that's probably a senior stakeholder, a person probably with connections and is a person in authority, has a great network, and is seeking opportunities to advocate for you, and is invested in you, and will put in a referral for you, right? So this is somebody within an organization that will speak up for you or champion you for that next step, right? And this is a relationship that is established like through the long term, right? Where they're like, if people are willing to put their name on the line, that it's somebody that knows you and knows your work and would speak on behalf of you, right? And so kind of like building that trust and credibility throughout like a longer runway. And so kind of having an idea of the folks that you can have on your team, these roles, these players, whether it be a mentor, a coach, or sponsor. And so as we think about, where you can start building your team and kind of like who you can reach out to, just we're here starting where you're at, right? Like connecting with folks in your breakout room and hearing their stories, as well as in the school, and with alumni and maybe even with professors. And so that's one place to start. Another place to go is these industry organizations, or even at events, right? Like, so if you're attending an event or part of an industry organization, some of these industry organizations, such as APHA, provide established mentoring programs within as an offering and as a service to their members. And the CUNY SPH Dean's Office gives gifts every master's and PhD student with membership to APHA. So for those of you that are new, you will be receiving an email from APHA welcoming you to activate your student membership. For those of you that have been at CUNY SPH for more than one semester, please go and activate your student membership. That's like $100 value in your pocket. But this is one of our favorite resources, the student membership to APHA, because there's so many bells and whistles, and I'm only talking about one today. And this one is called the Mentor Match, where you enroll yourself as a mentee, and then you're able to search a mentor directory of people to reach out to and connect with, people that they have asked, would you be interested in becoming a mentor? So these people have already said yes to becoming a mentor. It's just up to you to find them, or you to show up and be present and reach out. And so kind of like creating that profile, that mentee profile, is a starting point, and then looking through the database. And at this time, I'd like to introduce our featured alumni guest, Annie King, who has actually utilized the APHA Mentor Match, and she'll kind of walk us through that story of how she did that and how she benefited from that. But Annie, would you mind introducing yourself and tell us start us off with your CUNY SPH story? Like, why did you come to this program, and what did you get out of your time here, and like, were you working during school and all that other stuff?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Annie. So happy to be here again. I was part of like Career Skills Academy during my time at CUNY SPH, and I attended a lot of these career like workshops and worked with Tina as well, like even after graduating. So that's like one of my favorite parts about CUNY SPH is all the resources that are available to you during school and even after graduating. So I was part of the MS for Health Communications for Social Change program. And I did that all online. And I was not working at that time. I started school during the pandemic, and I had worked as a pharmacist prior to that. So coming out of COVID, like a little bit burnt out from work and wanting a bit of change in my career. So, and I'd always been interested in public health and in particular health communications. As like a retail pharmacist right in the community, how are we communicating health information about health to patients? And how can we do that better and more efficiently, more productively, especially in light of everything that happened during COVID? So that's what got me to CUNY SPH. And then afterwards, after I graduated, I worked at a communications firm doing health communications work for them. And it was great. It was everything that I had learned in school, everything I wanted, all the skills I wanted to put to the test, really. But I think the environment was not where I wanted to be. So I kept that job search going. And even during school, I had the opportunity to work on an internship with the mayor's PEU, which is, or, New York City's mayor's PEU, which is the public engagement unit. And that's like kind of a grassroots type of organization that connects New Yorkers to all the public services in New York City. So health and human services, particularly. So like connecting people to tenant services, health insurance, getting them covered, helping people find housing through like landlord connections, sponsorships. And I think that was what really sparked my interest in working in government, being able to serve like an entire population of people. So I pursued that, and I ended up getting a job for the state of Connecticut in their Department of Consumer Protection Drug Control Division as a drug control agent. So what I do now is more related to my pharmacy background, in that we regulate the distribution of legal drugs, everything from like practitioner licensing, inspecting pharmacies, investigating patient consumer complaints. And right now my focus is on cannabis enforcement, as cannabis in Connecticut is a Schedule III drug. So it's been another learning opportunity for me, exploring that side of the industry. And part of my job in this drug control division is also helping with any like public health initiatives, because the Department of Consumer Protection in Connecticut is separate than the Department of Public Health, but there are some initiatives that overlap. So that's where kind of my, I guess, second background in public health, health communications comes into play. So it's been a really interesting like overlap of these two parts of my career journey so far, but it's been really exciting, and I wouldn't have it any other way.
So Annie, it sounds like from COVID through to now, like pre-COVID, you were doing you have a background in pharmacies, you were working in retail pharmacy, and you went for a transition and for the MS Health Communications for Social Change program to kind of like pivot in a new direction. And that internship with New York City Mayor's Office, PEU, the Public Engagement Unit, that's actually that's something that you did while you were at SPH, is that right?
Yeah.
And it's like that. I think that internship is open again. So for those that are interested, get on Handshake and apply for that. That's a great internship to have, and just having that government exposure. So it's kind of like where you're at now. It's the intersection between your pharmacy, your internship at PEU, New York City Mayor's Office, and also your health communications background coming into play, and all of these intersectionalities. That's wonderful. Can you tell us, like, when did you use the APHA mentor match? Like, from what I remember, you tried it a couple of times. And like, what were those experiences like? Who did you speak to? And like, how did that help you get to where you're at now?
Yeah, I think it was from one of these workshops that I learned about it. Um, and I had signed up for the APHA membership, but not really sure like what it offered. So that was a nice reminder to sign up and like try it out. Um, and I thought like there's nothing you can really lose as a mentee, like reaching out to a mentor who, like Tina said, is already committed to mentoring. So I signed up and you can pick a mentor, you can read about their background info, kind of where they work now, what they do. So that's helpful in choosing someone that you might want to learn more from. So the first mentor I picked was someone who was in a similar industry that I was in, so in pharmacy as well. And then she was like responsive at first and then not so much after a while. So I didn't feel like I was getting what I wanted out of the program. So I reached out to APHA and asked if I could get another mentor, which they were fine with. Um, so I was able to choose another mentor, and this time, instead of choosing someone like directly in the industry that I was in, I went for someone who was geographically in Connecticut and also doing some work with the state of Connecticut. And at least for me, that proved to be more beneficial because when I asked him questions, I asked like in the context of what kind of skills, what kind of experiences would the state want out of a pharmacist? And he had a lot of connections too with pharmacists in this field of work and in other fields too. But everyone that he knew was kind of local at least. And eventually he connected me with a pharmacist who worked at the Connecticut Department of Public Health. And I had like an informational meeting with this pharmacist, which was really helpful in learning about how pharmacists use their skills in this public health setting in the state of Connecticut, because it's not very common for pharmacists to work in this capacity in our state, at least. Most pharmacists work clinically at state facilities. So his perspective was really interesting and gave me a lot of the content and like verbiage to talk about my own experiences ultimately in my interview with the state. And I think that helped me a lot in framing my experience the way that would be receptive for them.
So it sounds like just that mentorship relationship and kind of like, it's not necessarily I guess it is industry knowledge in terms of like an insider scoop on like how government might work or what they're looking for in a skill set within like pharmacy and kind of those intersections. And so like with this information, how was this helpful like in terms of the, as you were going through like interviewing and stuff like that?
Yeah, I think it was really helpful, even though he knew other people in the role I was interviewing for. Like I couldn't really reach out to them because of like it's not really something they can act on the state level. Like someone who's actively interviewing, they can't really provide
Right, they
any
can't
like
talk to
advice
somebody
and
that's like
stuff.
an active,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um, but it was helpful in like being able to talk about it from a public health perspective because like I went through all the public health classes at CUNY SPH, but then really connecting that with my pharmacist background was helpful because I mean I had like thought about it, but I never really applied it, especially in the capacity that he was doing at the Department of Public Health. So even being able to talk about patient care on a state level when it applies so broadly to the entire population was helpful.
So it sounds like just having a chance to hear somebody talk about it, and then also for you to share and practice yourself talking about it, kind of help
Right.
prepare you for those interviews and to have more of that inside scoop and more of that insider language or that verbiage
Right.
to land the job that you're in right now, which is so cool to see all of these things from your entire background come together.
Hmm.
Well, a- any any other advice or encouragement do you have for our audience here today about mentorship or about career resources? And if anybody has any questions, you're also welcome to drop them in the chat. Annie will also be around for the breakout rooms. So if it doesn't come to mind right now, but I just wanted to mention that she's here as an alum coming back to speak to you all. So feel free to connect with her and ask her some questions. But Annie, yeah, like would love to hear like if there's any advice or encouragement that you'd like to share with the audience.
I think the biggest piece is to reach out. Um, and you never know how that connection can lead to another or another down the line. Um, I think even if it's someone who you don't think would exactly provide you the value that you're looking for, like you never know. It could be helpful. He could have someone, or they could have someone to introduce you to. They could have just general career advice for you. And also like don't be afraid to reach out. Like as part of HPHA, they also have like some webinar series that I attended. Um, and then everyone's really nice on there too. They just share their contact information, you connect with each other, and these are people like all over, um, all over the state, or I mean, sorry, all over um, the world sometimes. So it's really cool to connect with people. And then I always like sent them a message afterwards, like, hey, it was nice seeing you on the webinar. Like, and then conversations kind of flow naturally. Some people were even open to like meeting one-on-one and just having like a general chat about our career journeys so far, or like what we're up to. Um, and I think it's just like any other relationship that you have. Like, yeah, it takes effort, but like what you get out of it can be so much more.
Wow, that's like chock full of advice, like kind of like that just to be present, to show up in reaching out, to kind of take that step, be bold and courageous, and that it's there's low risk but high reward in terms of what you can reap from um connections that once they get started, it could just grow naturally and organically into something more. And that is a lot of like great advice that Annie has shared, and would want to give you all the chance to kind of go into breakout rooms to introduce yourself to one another, what degree program you're in. Have you had a mentor before? If you have, then please share about that experience. And if you haven't, what is something from today that brought you here? And is there anything new that you've learned that you want to try out? So if you could share that with one another, also as a way to build accountability. And if there are any other questions that haven't been answered, we'd love to hear those too. So Taylor's gonna break us out into these smaller groups, and then we'll regroup for some final advice, best practices, tips, and announcements. So enjoy your time. We'll bring everybody back about 6:50 before we close out. Okay. Does anybody have any questions about joining the breakout room? And if you need help getting moved in, then Taylor can help you with that. So just feel free to drop that in the chat. I think I'm gonna go into room 3. So I'll be back. And Taylor, you wanna bring us all back at about like 6:50 then?
Sounds good. I'll be here.
All right, thank you. Anybody? Or any questions for Annie if you didn't get a chance to be in her room? I can share some of the things that
Go.
I heard. Oh, go ahead. Who's that?
Oh, it's Usman. I was just gonna say, like, I'm pretty chit chatty, so if you don't mind, and obviously, I don't want to share Maria's business, but I think, I think like one of the things that I found very interesting was just how it was pretty. I'm assuming this was like a random like placement in the different
Yeah.
boxes in the chat rooms, but we seem to have so much background that is similar and overlaps. And one of the things that it sort of also reinforced for me was just like how broad public health is and how people come from so many different backgrounds, and also how much similarity there is. So yeah, it's very heartening. Very like, so I can feel it's heartening. It's heartening.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing, Osmond, because it is completely random who you got paired up with. And yeah, it's just one of those things where you never know, right? When you show up someplace and who you get to connect with and where those conversations can lead. I heard some other really cool stuff in some of the breakout rooms that I was in. And Annie, I don't know if you want to share a little bit about some of the stuff that you heard in yours, but the conversation that was going on about connecting with professors, like it doesn't necessarily have to be like a official mentorship program, but a professor and going to office hours, like utilizing office hours, like utilizing your faculty advisors' office hours just to connect with them and engage with them even beyond just the classwork, right? Just emails and just getting to know them. They may be your referrals at some point, or writing recommendations, or just like asking them about their research. Those are some cool things that I heard, tips that I heard. Annie, did you hear anything from your room that you can kind of share out?
Well, we talked a bit, sorry, about like how to build confidence in general. And part of that was in like reaching out to mentors or other professional connections, like being able to talk about yourself and practicing talking about yourself, and how that builds confidence over time too.
Yeah, that's a really great one. And it's just like, just that starting point of wherever you're at. And I think like, another thing that I heard from one of the rooms was kind of like, how is it that, oh, networking, ugh, like it sounds so icky. But, and it's like, we don't want to get into this thing about using people and that sort of thing. And I think like if we approach it as more building friendships, but there is like those transactional pieces of like connecting, emailing, and following up. But like how can we move beyond that from transactional into relational, right? But like both need to happen. It's not either or, it's both and. And so kind of connecting with one another on LinkedIn, kind of like use this time now, DM each other in the chat, drop your LinkedIn if you want to be connected with or with the folks that are here. Do it immediately. Do it in that time, right? Keep a directory or a list handy of like event, name of the person, like where, if they're CUNY SPH and that sort of a thing, or what info that you have. So you kind of look back at it as to who you can reconnect with too, right? And sort of like just starting in that one place and then spidering out, and how that one person can lead you to another person, kind of like mapping things out. And so, I think the other thing is kind of like it's a marathon. It is a long-term runway, and building that relationship over time and having a long-term view to cultivate this lifespan, right? Starting with that self-reflection, like, what are the questions that I have about myself, about career, about what's out there, and who can help me? What can I find out about this person in advance of actually connecting, right? Like initiating that, but then also being prepared that once you connect, that you have questions that are prepared to guide that conversation, and listening well, and sending that thank you and following up and building that next, like all the way to like 10 connections later, right? and moving from these casual conversations to these meaningful conversations and connections. And kind of like that initial outreach, right? Like it might be a cold call, but how do you warm that up over time in becoming more and more acquainted and connected? And like scattering your seeds widely, right? Like kind of like showing up, being present, and getting on LinkedIn and that sort of thing, and connecting and reconnecting, right? So spread those seeds, kind of like water it, shine on it, like spend time and letting that sprout and moving that relationship, moving that being like just an acquaintance to maybe that person could be that mentor, or others that can be that sponsor or that champion or that advocate. And so one of the questions that somebody had asked, I thought it was really good ones, like, what are some of the biggest mistakes to avoid, right? Like, and I think there are challenge areas with all relationships, right? Like, what's the actual commitment? I mean, like, and what is there a time structure to things, right? Like those there are set mentor programs where it's like, all right, meet up once a month or whatever, which are great, because if they've committed to that, then keeping up with that. But life gets busy, right? So think having an understanding of what that commitment level, and if there's time and structure, or if it needs to be built, more time and structure needs to be built into those relationships, those conversations, and just having those expectations, right? Like setting and managing those to be realistic, right? Because some of those pitfalls can also be like, if a mentor becomes too dependent on and calling if a mentee becomes too dependent and calls the mentor for everything without trying things on their own first, right? So kind of like being considering how you approach this and what is the time and structure and commitment and expectations around that. And so just to reiterate, like, I feel like APHA and other industry professional organizations, conferences and events, dinners, like even meetups, like those could be great places to meet somebody, because you never know, right? So if you can fit that into your calendar and build networking, build events into your job search, it will amplify the things that you do as you prepare your resume, cover letter, application materials, and also like interviewing, because you're already out there practicing telling your self intro and adjusting it on the fly depending on who you meet, right? So there are places to go in person and online, whether it's on APHA, like Annie had also mentioned that they have virtual events, right? Those member sections, joining that that kind of, because public health is so broad, finding people that have common interests with you, right? And utilizing that mentor match feature. Even on Handshake, as you apply for jobs, the community feature there is really cool too. Like you can message people right there and then. It's kind of like an internal like LinkedIn. And certainly on LinkedIn, using the alumni page, filtering it down. If you haven't utilized this tool before, let me know. I'll be glad to show you. If you want to stick around afterwards, I can do a quick demo. But other places where you can show up locally in community and volunteering, especially for like our health policy folks, kind of like civic engagement, right? Like grassroots, being there too. You never know who you're going to meet. And also for those that are working, there are sometimes like workplaces will have employee resource groups, ERGs, or like kind of like work clubs, if you will. They can be maybe by, they could be cultural clubs. They could be book clubs. They could be like women in leadership. They could be, like Asian American, like API groups, it runs the gambit. And so those can be like, those employee resource groups could also be a place. And sometimes they have membership, mentorship programs embedded in those as well. And so we have a variety of resources, listing of like tip sheets on networking with different professional associations, and how to conduct informational interview, and things about your LinkedIn profile, as well as things on Handshake, and the Career Center resources. So be sure to check all that stuff out. And if you have any questions, again, we're happy to continue this conversation. But just wanted to encourage all of you to kind of like build that your team, plan ahead, right? Research, prepare yourself, connect broadly, like check in and do that follow up. And so, before we head out tonight, we have some time for questions, but also would really appreciate if you all fill out the survey. It means so much to us to know how we can best serve you. So if you can help us help you, that would be great. Just answering these quick questions. And just the lineup of like other events that are coming up, they cover a gambit of topics. So kind of like save these dates and keep an eye on that calendar on what's coming up ahead. We talked about kind of connecting with faculty as well. So that's later this month. And also like that social media and that self-introduction. And also like for those of you that are new to CUNY SPH, like getting to know all the different SPH centers and institutes that are going on at your campus. I mean, these are some of your professors or the PIs, the principal investigators that pulling all the grant money, and maybe they need help on their research, right? Like other things that are going on with Harlem Health Initiative. There's another one with SRJ Hub, the Sexual Reproductive Justice Hub. So lots of resources out there. Close out tonight, please fill out the workshop survey, and also would really value any kind of closing questions or remarks, or things that you wanna try out. Does anybody have any questions for us, or for Annie, for our speaker?
I do have a question.
Yes.
So I haven't been in school for the past 12 years, right? I'm back now. And my LinkedIn is kind of obsolete. So I want to know if there is a part of the school that assists with, getting it together, like up to date.
That's us. So come and meet with us. We're happy to do that. And your LinkedIn is never obsolete. It just needs a refresh. That's all.
Okay, great.
We're going to reframe that.
Okay, great. So I get back to you, Tina.
Yes. And you can book an appointment. I'm going to drop the
Mhm.
link in the chat.
Yes, please.
Just
Thank
go into
you.
your handshake. And so they have new students just got into Handshake last week. The appointments are booked through November. So grab one for December and email and ask to be put on the wait list for anything else that opens up. So we'll be glad to meet up with you. So plan ahead. Students can grab one appointment per week. So if there are 2 in December, feel free to grab 2. Oh, and thank you, Osman, for offering to connect with folks here. Good for you.